I'd like to call the November 30th, 2021 Legislative Delegation Meeting to order. On behalf of the Chesterfield County School Board, I'd like to thank our legislative delegation. We've built a strong partnership between the school board, Board of Supervisors, and our legislative delegation. Together, we have been effective advocates for our county and working together as a team. We sincerely appreciate the advocacy and responsiveness the legislative delegation has been to the needs of our school division. This meeting is an opportunity for us all to collaborate. After my remarks, Dr. Daugherty will give brief remarks, and then Mr. Smith will walk us through the 2022 draft legislative program. The board will vote on December 14th, but we want to hear from the delegation before we vote. After Mr. Smith's presentation, I will open the floor for comments, questions, and any answers that could be given from my board colleagues and from members of the legislative delegation. Once again, thank you very much for coming out here this evening. Dr. Daugherty.
Thank you, Mr. Harder. Thank you for being here. I know how busy you are, and it's only going to get busier. So thank you so much for taking the time. It's great to see everyone back in person, and an opportunity that we have to just share our thoughts and where we're looking into the future. We have two top legislative priorities for this year, and we wanted to narrow the focus down as these priorities. Chesterfield County School Board has always supported, but especially now, supports the efforts to attract, develop, and pay and retain quality teachers, administrators, and staff workers. I think sometimes it's lost in the area how large we are. Over 72,000 employees. We are the largest in the Central Virginia area, 63,000 plus students, 66 schools, on and on and on, and covering over 400 square miles of territory. And so when we're looking to hire staff, looking to bring additional support into our schools for our children, we have to think of the big picture, which is Chesterfield County. And we know that you understand the teacher shortage not only in Central Virginia, not only in Virginia, but in the country. And I think this is we are at a perfect time in history to really look at the pay structure of our colleagues, not only in Chesterfield, but throughout the state, but especially in Chesterfield. I could tell you that we must do something drastically now because there's a shortage in every region in this state. I know in Region 1, it's an issue, and the competition for staff to get them into Virginia is rigorous right now. We also know that there's other opportunities that we can to look at how things are structured. To eliminate the support cap is something that the school board of Chesterfield County supports because the elimination in the Commonwealth of this cap would help support the funding formula for additional staff that we have. With this cap, we actually have over 1,000, almost 1,100 staff members that we put into schools that are 100% our cost. And we believe that the elimination of this support cap would help with positions such as student mental health, safety, psychologists, nurses, social workers, on as we look at what we need in our schools. When you and I were in school, it was different. We are now a full support operation with our students, not only the educational side, but the counseling side, mental health side, the physical health side. So we are here to support you. We are here to offer any questions that you have, walk with you through this process. But we know that you have a heart for education. We know that you are concerned about the future of our children, as we are. You are studying in a school district that's 100% accredited. And we're very proud of that, and we believe we'll continue to do that. But we do need the talented people that are in the classroom, the teachers, the principals, the instructional assistants, the counselors, make it happen every day. So thank you for being here, and this time, Mr. Chairman, I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Daugherty. At this time, I'd like to turn our presentation over to Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Dr. Doherty. Thank you all for being here tonight. Look forward to continuing the relationship we have with each of you and new relationships with new members of the delegation tonight. This presentation is some things you've probably heard before. I'm going to hit some of the highlights. I want to lend some of our time to obviously the discussion, hear from you about some things that are important to you, things you are important to you as far as the school division as well, and any questions we can help answer. As Dr. Doherty mentioned, we are 100% accredited. We're very proud of that statistic. We do know that given the recent challenges, that remains a challenge and an opportunity, quite frankly, each and every day. And that's due in large part for the success in our classroom with our teachers on the front line. One of the important things to constantly remember is that we are a large operation. I've left some statistics up here just to recall the fact that we have almost 10,000 employees. We include our part-time employees as well. 9 million miles of our buses driven each and every day. We have over 500 buses on our fleet. Compare that to some of our smaller districts, and we're quadrupling, quite frankly, that workforce. Serving almost 5.5 million meals each and every day. And obviously our computer devices, we have a one-to-one initiative for all of our students. When you think about enrollment, I know you've heard a lot from other school districts about enrollment. We've been fortunate in Chesterfield County that we did see a dip during the pandemic with our enrollment. We are back up with our enrollment. We've seen increasing enrollment in Chesterfield schools. So obviously one of the things that we'll talk with the delegation about during the General Assembly is you'll hear from school divisions who'll say protect our ADM. We certainly want that as well, but also to acknowledge that we as a division are actually growing with our student population. When we look at the different student populations, the important part to know is that we are a changing community. You see it firsthand. We are a majority minority school division. We've seen different demographics change and adjust over the years. One of the things that's important to really note also is we look at kind of our student population, which is inherently reflective of our community. And that we do have almost 34% qualifying for free and reduced price lunch. To put that in perspective, we did put up here a statistic that shows you that that means that our entire student enrollment in 2019, when you think about that, our students in poverty is larger than the entire enrollment for almost 119 school divisions. When you think about Chesterfield County and think about the challenges that we have, obviously our strong emphasis obviously is in the classroom, but also we know we have to tend to the needs that our families have, and that's a resource that we try to strive to each and every day. Think about the kind of the timeline. Part of being here tonight is important to have the conversation, to hear from the delegation. Our board is having conversations with the county with regard to the county priorities, the school division priorities. Our meeting tonight's important to that. Ultimately, we'll vote in December. We know we're looking forward to the changes that are coming about with regard to the General Assembly in January. We look forward to seeing the new committee assignments that come with that. We know that we've had a strong delegation throughout the different changes with political parties, and we know that it'll continue to be strong with you. So when we think about the legislative principles for our delegation and obviously for our school division, when I analyze all the legislation, we see almost 300 pieces of education-related legislation each and every year. There are 4 principles we apply to. The first one is the ensure equitable, fair, and unbiased access to all the resources. The second piece is allowing us maximum discretion in our decision-making process, supporting flexibility, relaxation of certain mandates, and obviously the opposition to any new or statutory regulatory requirements. And the key there is not so much the opposition with those mandates, but ensuring that they're fully funded and fully analyzed throughout. Obviously, as Dr. Doherty has hit upon, kind of our new pieces, obviously for our key priorities is really with the funding piece, the enhanced funding for K-12 education. The second piece obviously is investing in our workforce. Working closely with our county government, we've made strategic initiatives that have gone directly to our workforce through compensation studies and really trying to align not just our workforce, but also aligning us to be competitive across the region. That's something that we continue to strive for. The second piece that Dr. Doherty mentioned, obviously, is the elimination of the support cap. Obviously, the General Assembly made some strides last session with that conversation. We'd still like to see some greater movement with that. We estimate that obviously the elimination of the support cap in our school division would increase our funding by almost $24 million. We think it's an important investment here in Chesterfield County. Some other highlights, obviously we work closely with this delegation and Delegate Coiner on the measuring student achievement and growth. We've seen some great strides within that Churchill County. We're a leader when it comes to that. We like to see kind of the continued movement, not just with the General Assembly and Education Committees, but obviously with the Department of Education with regard to those local growth assessments. And we've had really good feedback from our parents looking at that, especially as we come off the pandemic, seeing where our kids are, the increased needs that they have, that we can be not just strategic with our investments, but strategic with our instructional resources as well. The COVID-related expenses obviously is a continued focus for us. We have been the fortunate recipients of federal funding that's allowed us to do a lot of great things, and obviously at the state funding level as well. We're using those strategically for one-time resources, knowing that those things that we have to tend to, obviously once that money does run out in a couple of years. We do know that obviously with the COVID-related expenses, we are seeing increased needs with our student population, whether it's mental health resources, student support services as well. We're having to kind of adjust not just our instructional needs, but our support services needs. That's tied close to the COVID-related piece. But mental health is a key portion of that as well. And the last piece up here is twofold. One is collaboration with our county government. We're fortunate to have a great relationship with Dr. Casey, Natalie Spillman is here tonight working with the county government. We really want to show our delegation, obviously, what we know is true is a strong partnership between county government and schools, and also with our education foundation as well, and some legislation we'll be working with the delegation on. You have in your packet, obviously, the copy of this PowerPoint presentation. You also have a copy of the program itself, which kind of outlines some of those pieces. We do have in the back of that program our contact information. Obviously, we're a resource, obviously, to each and one of you, whether it's Churchill related or just being an education resource to you. With that, I want to yield back to Mr. Chairman to have some open discussion with the delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We briefly ran through the program, and everything is included in the booklet and included in the slides. And hopefully I'd like to just take this time now to open the floor up to any questions that anyone would have or recommendations. I think one of the things that sometimes gets lost is, everyone's on the same team. We're all trying to do what is best for the kids here in Chesterfield County and in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so if anyone would like to go first.
I'll go first.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to know what Chesterfield's doing to address the learning loss issue in the kids, and actually doing in the classroom to help these kids get caught up. When I was campaigning and knocking doors, when I talked with teachers at doors, when I talked to teachers at other events, they're definitely seeing learning loss in the classroom. And so what is being done to address that?
There we go. Thank you for the question. Well, we put a plan together during the pandemic to look at recovery of learning through 2024. And I'll give you an example. This past summer, we had I think the largest ever summer school program. Our summer school was larger than a third of the school divisions in the regular school year. We had over 10,000 students that we addressed. We are running after-school programming. We've provided additional support in schools for our students, and we have asked our staff members not to rush through the information, because we also have to deal with the social and emotional of coming back. Think about a student in second grade. They miss first grade and most of their kindergarten. And what do you learn in kindergarten and first grade? Basically how to work with people, how to talk to people, and how to be in a class. You think of our high school students that are in 10th grade, they miss 9th grade in that area there. And so with our opportunity to look at some of the our MAP testing that we look at in the beginning of the year and the middle of the year, to look at any growth that occurs in the deficiencies that are occurring. We do not believe, and anybody who says otherwise would be fooling you, that we're going to catch up all in 1 year. Our goal is to see the growth occur throughout the year that shows us that our students are progressing forward. And we've seen a lot of that occur already in the time we've been back, and that's why it's important for us to be back in school every day for that reason. We are excited about our mid-year assessments that will help us find in reading and math especially where we have to dig in with our students with differentiated instruction. But we are confident that we are going to see a considerable amount of growth by the end of this year in our students. and continue that process again next year with another strong and vigorous summer school program and then after-school programs as well. And that's through at our elementary, middle, and high. We are also working with some community groups and other groups to reach out and go into communities. And so we are excited about that opportunity as well. We have basically reached out to everyone that we can to say, how can you help us? How can you help our children? An example would be, we didn't take time off during the pandemic. We actually started 17 initiatives. Example was the Chester Early Learning Center, where we have 350 3- and 4-year-olds that are going to help them be above proficiency, hopefully. And we want them reading by the time they go into kindergarten. And so we are looking at every avenue. Our teachers are working extremely hard. We're providing them the time they need in the classroom. I think some things we've done in the last several months to help release some of the stress, adding more substitutes. We had a great substitute teacher fair to get more substitutes in the buildings. Also put more staff in the buildings. We've placed more staff in the buildings. And I think we're starting to see, we're seeing smaller class sizes throughout. Our virtual academy is still running. We're at 98% back in the classroom, but 2% of our kids are still virtual, and we're monitoring them very closely as well. Yes, ma'am.
Just something really quick to add to that is also, I think that something that we've found out is that one of the most important things we can do is keep our kids in the classroom. And so last year and this year, we've worked diligently to ensure that all the safety protocols are in place and try to minimize the amount of time that students would be out as much as possible under current guidelines that we're subject to. Something else that Dr. Doherty, I don't think he hit on, was we actually have partnered with Virtual Virginia lately as well, too. We're short a number of math positions, and there just isn't the students coming through the programs in the Commonwealth of Virginia or even in some of the other surrounding states. And so we have a deficit. We have a shortage of math teachers specifically, and we've partnered with Virtual Virginia to try to help supplement some of our areas where we are deficient, where we don't have the math teachers that we would need. Senator Hoshby.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the presentation. First of all, I just want to commend everyone on the school board. I know how challenging these past several months have been, and Chesterfield County has done an extraordinary job of staying connected to parents and staying connected to us and sharing the issues that you have been facing. And I especially want to commend some of the recent changes that the school board has implemented. I know I've heard from parents about how gratified they are about the inclusive calendar and the opportunity for their children to feel welcome, safe, and secure in our school systems. I want to thank you also for implementing the VDOE policies that are protective and acknowledging our trans students who are here and the progress that is made to support so many different families. I know we have a very rich and diverse county, and all of that is reflected through the school and the work and the efforts that you are making and our teachers are making. So thank you for that. I've heard wonderful feedback from parents on all of those concerns. I did want to just talk a little bit further about the current shortage of teachers. I know it's statewide, it's nationwide, and I know that we are all facing this crisis. We're going to be doing everything we can to support opportunities to increase the teacher pipeline. Some proposals that are on the table are to help folks who are going into the field of education to pay off student debt, to support tuition-free college opportunities for individuals going into pursuit of teaching. And also, I've put in legislation to hopefully try to bring our pay raise back to where we need it to be, to the standards required in the SOQs. So we're going to fight for all of that this session, and I hope that we'll be successful. I was wondering if you might be able to give us some ballpark numbers about the kind of shortages we're seeing in teachers and where those shortages most critically are. You pointed to math as a particular area. Are we struggling more so with our high school, middle school, elementary school? Just kind of what that map looks like for us in Chesterfield County.
You would be correct in all of the statement you just made. It's across the board. I think when you look at the elementary level, you'll see pockets, but at the secondary level, it's in content. And when you think of science and math, even in the career and technical field, when they can make 4 times as much money going into the business world. And the opportunity, I mean, one thing that we have done since I've been here is we talk to all of our student teachers before they finish and offer them a contract. So we try not to let them leave us. And, they know the good, the bad, the ugly of us when they're in our schools. And we hired over 50% of our student teachers in this fall, and they will start in January. We'll do that again in the spring. I think the issue is that the lack of pay has affected education over time, and now people do not want to go into the field because they see opportunities to make a much more money, have greater salaries by going into the business community. And we're looking in ways to look at second career opportunities, talking to, when we have several military bases around us and people who are living in Chesterfield and their spouses are looking for work. But we're looking at not only in the classroom, but instructional aides, staff members in buildings as well. When you think about nutrition staff, when you think of maintenance workers, and it goes on, and how this is why our focus on our budget this year is going to be looking at all salaries and get them at or above market value. But it is talking with friends around the country, they're dealing with the same issues, and everyone's thinking outside the box on how to bring people in and work. And even with our substitutes, we go to substitutes and say, we look at their transcripts and say, what would it take for us to help you get your degree so you could teach? And we've helped instructional aides get their certificate to teach. We've helped substitute teachers actually do that as well. I think everything's on the table to do it, to get there.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in also, special education teachers is extremely a high needs area, as well as the secondary maths and sciences. But SPED teachers, K through 12, instructional assistants for our SPED students. Our special ed population is increasing, and I don't see that getting any smaller, and so the need for SPED teachers is huge as well. But I loved your ideas, especially about the tuition help if they major in education, paying back student loans if they teach in Chesterfield. Those are all great ideas and incentives to try to incentivize our students, because there was a fact that Dr. Huff quoted to us, and Ryan alluded to. There aren't enough graduates from teacher ed programs in the state of Virginia to fill the vacancies in Fairfax, much less in the state. So we are all, in competition for those few grads. And we all know what works in competition. And so the higher salaries, the better, more attractive we can make the job opportunities for them in Chesterfield will help us attract and retain our teachers. I think if you look at our priorities, you'll see that it's not in stuff, it's in people. Our priorities right now are in our people, because our educational system is nothing without the teacher in the front of the room. And I think that the year and a half of virtual has shown us that. We need the teachers in the front of the room. We need them. And so our priorities are our people. So instead of funding things, we need to fund our humans.
I wanted to, thanks, Ms. Bailey, I wanted to address a little bit Delegate Robinson's acknowledging the incredible learning loss. Our key initiative of lifting the support cap is really tied to that because currently the ratio, our kids have incredible needs right now. If you imagine if you and your spouse worked in a hospital during COVID, you were working very long shifts, the two of you. So your kids may have been at home with minimal parental guidance for a year and a half. And kids did not have access to mental health services. Roughly 80% of mental health services for all children are provided in school. So they didn't have access to that. Their parents were in a very difficult conditions dealing with their own trauma. And as a result, kids have real needs. And our student staff ratio for psychologists and social workers who, in partnership with their school nurses, help address these needs is 1 to 1,848, I think. Don't quote me exactly, but it's 1 to 1,800. So you can imagine incredible needs, and schools have to share support staff with other schools. So I think it's important you can't learn if you're struggling with a mental health issue. And so that partnership, right? And so another thing that comes to my mind in terms of the partnership, we're doing what we can on our level. And this is because I have a strong contingency of parents in my district that are advocates for literacy. Decoding Dyslexia, the Central Virginia leaders live in the Midlothian district. So I would ask at the General Assembly level to Decoding Dyslexia, parents who have reached out to me and said specifically, since I'm going to this meeting, how is the General Assembly going to address the literacy loss? Because we know, right, that what the research shows, if you're not reading by grade 3, you're more likely to end up homeless, school to prison pipeline, all of that. Kids need to be reading by grade 3. So how can you help us in the General Assembly address this issue?
I can talk about that a little bit. I was making a list of everyone else talking. Well, first, thank you for having all of us in this chance to get together and hear from you all. One thing I wanted to address was the growth measure assessment. What everyone received this fall was not the growth assessment measure, right? And I think that was confusing for parents and teachers across the state. That new growth assessment tool is being developed and won't roll out fully until 2024. So what families got in the fall was a shortened SOL test from the year before. So if you were a 4th grader, you got a shortened 3rd grade SOL. And I think it confused a lot of folks thinking that's the new growth assessment, when it was really just a data point that the state and really localities really needed to see where are our older kids when they show back up in the fall post-COVID. So I know you all knew that a little bit better than other localities, but we did see that was some confusion. So thank you for your continued efforts of reducing SOLs, but also keeping high standards, ensuring that our kids are growing and learning. It's really important. I would echo the Virtual Virginia piece. I did mention to some folks today, I think another area we have a lot of room to grow in is what it looks like to be a virtual teacher. We threw all of our teachers in and expected all of them to be able to be virtual teachers, but it is a very different skill set, and to continually have to do that. And it's not just on localities. I experienced a Virtual Virginia class myself with my Chesterfield County middle schooler this summer. And I do think we have room to grow in what professional development looks like for long-term for virtual teaching in Virginia. I would echo the senator's remarks about what we're able to provide for supports for our folks who are going into our teaching profession. I've been meeting with all of our higher education institutions about their education preparation programs. We only have about a third of the folks who end up in our buildings in Virginia who are actually going through those programs, which means the vast majority of folks who are entering your classrooms and our classrooms to teach our kids did not go through a formal educator preparation program. And if we believe that that is important and an important skill set to be, not just to pass the licensure to go teach, but to actually have that preparation, how do we encourage more people to choose that path rather than another major and then end up in the classroom not prepared as someone who may go through that program? And then a couple of things that I'll just update you on that I have coming up. We're continuing to work on Recovery High School. Appreciate all of you continuing to work on that. I know the behavioral health folks, their department has been working diligently on it, and we're continuing to work on putting that funding back in place. So I'll be working on that. And then, the bill I'm working on this year is in relation to literacy. So I've been working with the law school public policy clinic at UVA since June on addressing our literacy gap, which was really an issue before COVID, but COVID has made it really an emergency where we can't let folks just slowly jump on board. So I do have a bill this year that will shift all of our teacher preparation programs, our K-12 classroom instruction to be based in scientifically based research is what we would be shifting towards as an entire Commonwealth. We have some folks who are already doing that. They're seeing great progress, and there's been carrots put out by VDOE to get more people to do it, but we're just at a point, as you have noted, we have so many kids so far behind in every locality across Virginia. We really need consistency in all of our classrooms and for all of our teachers to get professional development and understanding how all children learn to read and how their brains work in that way. So look forward to sharing more about that and working with you all.
Carrie, does that bill come with funding for that training and for all of that professional development? I mean, is that part of the?
It does. So we will be also submitting a budget amendment along that. The bill really includes 4 pieces. One is the higher education teacher prep piece. The second is professional development. The third is around changes in curriculum and interventions. And the fourth is supporting parents so that parents understand when they get their reading data back, what that really means for their child, and that they receive resources that they can support their child at home as well. So it will have a budget amendment to go along with it.
Senator Chase?
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to be with you all this evening. I want to begin by thanking you for your tireless service to the Commonwealth and to the county. I know it's been a very challenging year for all of us, and kudos to all of you. I'm thankful my kids are all grown. Basically, one of the questions I had, and this came up in the Senate Finance meeting that we had, the retreating that we had, I guess it was last week, when we were talking about shortages that we were seeing students leaving the public school system altogether, and we were talking about a questionnaire that was asked as an exit survey, and the question I asked was, why are so many kids leaving our school system? Now, I can tell you, from my perspective, having many, many constituents reaching out to me, concerns over the mask mandate, which I've actually spoken to our governor-elect, Youngkin, who, by the way, appointed me to his transition team today on education, so I'm really looking forward to working with you on that as well. But I know that that's been a concern for many parents, and I know it's been a challenge on how you handle that particular situation with parents having very strong views both ways, and I don't envy your position at all on that, but will simply say I do have a lot of parents who have expressed that they have already pulled their kids out of the school system or, are homeschooling and that type of thing. And I know in the question that was asked by the state, there's a survey question that was asked that maybe that's a question we want to include in there is why is the student leaving? And I just wanted to verify a number because I heard it, but I wasn't positive and have searched to find it everywhere and cannot find it. Maybe y'all could get that to me, but I had heard that over 4,000 students had left Chesterfield County school systems, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot here, but
Well, I checked attendance every day.
Okay, great.
And we are at 63,062 students as of today.
Who have left?
No, that's how many we have in our system.
Okay, so,
So I don't, if there were 4,000 that left, that would have put us at 67,000. And we were just above 62,000 before the pandemic. So we've grown almost 1,900 students since last June. So when we ended school last year to the start of this year, we've grown almost 1,900 students.
oh, wow.
And the projection from the county is that we'll be at 69,000 in 5 years.
Wow.
That's from the county government. They announced it last week.
So
So,
that's overall growth.
I don't know where the 4,000 are coming from.
Okay.
I imagine there are probably I hate to say this, but that's helping us if 4,000 people are going somewhere else. Right now, we're a little crowded. I hate to say it that way. We're a little crowded. But in talking with families, I would say some of the reasons that I have personally heard was the mask mandate was an issue for them.
Okay.
They didn't, especially at the younger age. But we found out something that was amazing with our virtual schooling, that students who were having difficulty in school were excelling in the virtual world. And so our opportunity is that Chesterfield has always had not a high number, but a considerable number of students who were homeschooled. And so we plan in the future to reach out to our homeschool parents and say, how would you like to be involved with the virtual learning? Because as you go through homeschooling, as you get older, it becomes a challenge. But I do think that the pandemic did cause a movement for parents to go to a homeschool issue or just to be involved in a homeschool co-op. But we've seen, we're growing every day. And like I said, we are over 63,000. And I would not be surprised if we're looking at, we'll see a big growth in January, February, we've had in the past. But I imagine we'll be about 63,500 by the end of the school year. And I would not be surprised if we're at 64,000 to start of next year.
Thank you for answering that question.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate it.
I have my computer because I was looking at, and just so you know, the number of teachers, example, we are short 72 elementary teachers. Now, when you think of 40 elementary schools, and you're looking at anywhere, from 1 to 2 in a school, which we've had to put long-term subs in that manner. Secondary is going to be specific, but I know that secondary level, we are short 13 math teachers right now. That's middle and high school. And so I think our principals and our district office staff have done a phenomenal job to make sure that we are providing the best instruction possible. But we can give you numbers. We got them everywhere.
That's wonderful. And I guess I would just conclude my comments by just saying, I know that our deadline for submitting legislation passed on Monday at 5 o'clock. However, we still, in the Senate, I think we still have 8 bills in the House, and correct me if I'm wrong, you all have 5 bills left that y'all can introduce if we can help you all with, if you have any specific needs. Now is definitely the time to reach out to us. Thank you.
Well, if I may, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead.
I think one of the things, this is my 4th year now in Chesterfield, but the one thing I've noticed is that a lot of legislation comes through the system, and we would appreciate that if there's legislation that there would be funding with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's extremely important that there is funding when a bill's passed. And I know the challenges that you have and the things that have to happen to get a bill passed and everything, and you guys do a great job, and I appreciate that. But anytime that something becomes legislation passed and it's law, then we have the obligation to make sure it's followed through. My responsibility is to follow the law. And then if you tell me to do something, then I have to find a way to pay for it. And many times that takes away from something else. And our entire goal here is to make sure that our schools are staffed to the best of our ability and that we have great people in the buildings. And I would just ask you to think about it. I know it's not going to stop everything, but when great ideas are coming from the General Assembly, put some money behind it for us, we would appreciate it. And thank you.
That's some of our mottos up here, no unfunded mandates. Sean Smith has done a great job of emphasizing that.
He
when
hears
he's
it from me
working
every
with
day,
us.
so I gotta tell you.
Senator Morrissey.
First of all, Dr. Doherty, members of the board, thank you for your help, for your work. Thank you for your presentation tonight. Dr. Doherty, three of those increased numbers of students are my children.
You are an avid drop-off person at Enon.
There'll be a fourth one, I think, next year. And so thank you for all your work. There's been some challenges, I know, with particularly school bus drivers, and I know you're working your way through that. I'd like to drill down for a moment on the specialized student support personnel. Last year, the General Assembly approved the State Board of Education's SOQ request to have 3 specialized student support personnel for every 1,000 students. So that's now the law. In your request, you're asking to increase it to 4. Can you tell me why and what argument would I make in the Senate to increase it to 4 after we've just done it to 3? What empirical evidence do you have to show that the increase has been successful, but we need to do more?
Thank you for that, and we appreciated the increase. We were, hate to say this, we were anticipating that and got ahead of the game by 1 year. Right as the pandemic began, we hired additional staff in our buildings. The support staff in schools is extremely important for our students. When you think about, I'll just go through with counselors and the need for counselors, that the ratio we've tried to lower. The opportunity when you look at our SOL, our English language learner students, and looking at the support that we have, we are 15% of our population is under the ESL program. When you think about the growth that we have, when you think about our students in need, and when I talk about our students, I usually talk about their well-being and health and not their academics, because if we are not addressing the needs that they have with their mental health, with their physical health, with the sense of belonging in a building, we will never achieve academic success. And I think the opportunity that we have, and we could take you around and show you, you talk to the people, but I think the success that we have had in our district is because, we provided that assistance. Like I said, we are very proud that we are a fully accredited school district, and we plan on being a fully accredited school district this year. And it's not only that we have great teachers, but we have the support that's needed. I always like to use the term, something I learned from friends in the military. They said that every person in battle has 5 people in the supply line to help them. And our teachers need the supply line to help them. And when Merv's not doing well in the classroom, there's someone there to give him counsel. And you can't have a counselor responsible for 300 students or 400 students. It's not reasonable, and it's not effective. It's not effective in the business world. It's not effective in the school realm as well. And so when you think about all the issues that we get from society that come into our school, we have to have staff there to make sure that they can help the students regain their focus and get back in the classroom as soon as possible. We don't send them home. We don't throw them out. We work with them, help them get better, and move forward. And sometimes that takes years to work with the student to get there. But as students are coming to us in kindergarten, in 6th grade, in 9th grade, no matter where they are, we meet them and help them with the success that they have to have with the support staff. And that going to 3 before, we're just looking at better ways. When I got here, we took 176 people in district office and put them back into the schools to help with support of our students. And so every chance that we get every chance we have to add more people into buildings to help students. It's not saying, oh, look at all the people we have. There's a reason why we have, we need support for students. When we run our programs like in Gaggle and see that, we have students that are suicidal, or students that need additional help, or students that are struggling and they're having mental health issues. We have to have people there for them. And one student can take up a counselor all day. When we tie in with the county health department and we tie in with state agencies. And so we're looking at this broad picture of one school, a great school where your children go to school, Enon. And you think about the support that they have to have because you have such a melting pot of students. And how do we make sure that those students all have the great opportunity to get a fantastic day of education every day? And the work that our support staff does to help our teachers is amazing. And I get to see it every day when I'm in the schools.
Follow-up question. During the recently completed Senate Finance Committee meeting in Roanoke, we addressed the amount of monies that have been put into the education component of our state budget. And one of the numbers that I remember seeing was, I think it was a de minimis amount of $15 million compared to the almost $1 billion that had been put into it, that was put into teachers of ESL students. And I thought that, I commented that it appeared to me much more was needed. Can you address, and you mentioned that a moment ago yourself, what component of your SOQs specifically related to ESL students do you think you need to see an increase in order to address those needs? And I think I read somewhere in your material that there's over 100 different languages spoken at home for
That was
students that attend
yesterday.
Chesterfield.
It probably grew today.
There's more than that.
That's a really good, thank you for asking that question. Well, I'll give, if I may elaborate a little bit, I'll give you an example. We added a 55 ESL in our budget last year to make sure that we were meeting some of the needs of the growth. This year, we went out to our Hispanic community, for example, and said, how do we make you feel more part of the school? And they gave us a great suggestion. We need some interpreters. So we went out, and with some of the federal funding right now, we were able to bring on staff members in offices in 14 of our schools, our highest Hispanic populated schools, to help with that interpretation. That has been a huge success. And so when you're asking how can we help, remember that any student that comes to us who's listed as an English language learner, George Washington University did a study about 10 years ago, and it said it takes a child 7 years when they come to us as a English language learner to learn the language. We want them to learn it in 1 year because we're going to test them. But it takes 7 years for them to become somewhat proficient in the language. That means they can read it, they can write it, and they speak it. And so our point is we want to try to catch them early. And we always hear about the opportunities to make sure everybody's reading by third grade. But that's also, if that's all of our students, then the support has to become earlier, not later. Even though we'll get students across the board from elementary, middle, and high that will come to us as someone who's been tested and needs additional language support. But the sooner we get them at an earlier age, the better we are. That's one thing we're seeing at the Chester Early Childhood Center down off Harrogate Road. We have a lot of our students are coming from families that are Hispanic, and they're learning both languages. And so the support that we would need, I think anyone would need in this state, but especially in Chesterfield, because we're so diverse, is making sure that we have the support to bring on people. We are getting ready to look at the numbers of families that are coming from Afghanistan. And so we got ahead of that several months ago and started talking to our community members who would want to come in and help us, even hire them to help us with the interpretation of it. And so schools have to think outside the box, but if we have the resources to think outside the box, we can tackle almost any problem there is. I hope I answered your question.
Well, unless somebody else has, I have a final question.
Okay, you get 3. Yes, Senator.
Did your Federal CARES Fund Act dollars address those needs that you just described right now sufficiently? And do you separate that pot of money, which will necessarily come to an end, from future monies that you're asking from the General Assembly to continue on with what you've started?
That's a good question, and I have a really good answer.
Say that again?
I have a really good answer. So thanks for asking the question. So what happens when we have our federal money, we look at opportunities, think outside the box of needs that we have.
Right.
I'll give you a real good example. Starting back several years ago when we started getting the money, we put our extra nurses, ESL, and counselors in the federal money,
Right.
saying that we are going to work to put them in our budget. And we let everybody know it. So after 1 year, we were able to take that money and put them into our budget to be sustainable. We're doing that again this year. We're looking at things that we have to help us with additional support for dropout prevention, for reaching out into communities, for dealing with multiple languages with our staff and taking them, and we want to build them into our budget. And so as we see our budget grow, we are taking it because we know we're under limited time to 2024, and so we are not saying anyone in here is going to be permanent. It's a one-stop gap from here to here, and that's how we're building our budgets.
Thank you.
Delegate Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it is a real pleasure to be back with you, the board members, and Dr. Doherty, to have this kind of exchange. I think it's very valuable. I find every time I come, I've learned things, and I've come to appreciate more about what you all are doing for students and for teachers and the staff that make it possible. Just as an example, to know that there were 10,000 students in summer school this year. I talked to parents, and I was talking today to two gentlemen who came on a different purpose, but both of their wives teach in Chesterfield schools. And they were talking about the huge challenges with the students who show up and who have had the losses in learning and what that means for their daily work. On the fall membership, it's very interesting to me to see the numbers. This year, apparently, it's been very difficult to get that September 30 figure from a number of divisions, and to know that you're down to you've got the exact numbers is a good sign. I'm interested. This is obviously not your thing, but it's interesting that there are a number of school divisions that apparently are not able to come up with those numbers even now, 2 months later. And the numbers suggest, in addition to the growth that residential growth that is a part of Chesterfield, that you all are doing, both yourselves and the staff and teachers that you have at work, principals, are doing what needs to be done to attract and keep students. And to see that coming back after last year's 3.5% decline statewide is a pretty stunning thing. We will be doing, of course, re-benchmarking this year. I'm told it's statewide something over $220 million, which is actually a fairly modest figure in comparison with previous re-benchmarking, which, as you know, reflects local work and additional positions. One question that occurred to me in the conversation, last year we did the hold harmless provision largely for divisions that did not see the student enrollment they anticipated. If I heard your numbers correctly, at 63,000 plus, you're above where you were last year significantly, and hold harmless monies probably would not be as significant as doing more in SOQs. Can you speak to the comparative value of hold harmless or SOQ funding?
Well, the hold harmless basically would have just put us where we are right now. So we doubt if we will receive much additional funding for that piece. We are looking forward to the re-benchmarking and hoping that when the sessions begin and the governor's budget comes out, that we do see some growth, and that we are anticipating and hopeful that there is growth in our budget from the state side, so we can really go after, with the county, the pay that has to increase. I'm trying to correct 15 years of neglect of salaries and trying to correct them. And no one's fault, just things, economies, but right now is the perfect time to do it. And we think that it's going to be a great opportunity. Any money the state wants to give us for the held harmless we'll take. because that number it moves quite a bit for the state to measure it. But as I said, I check every day, and I just want to be ready for the day, and as of the 30th of this month, which is today, we were pleased that we were over 63,000 again. I doubt we'll get to 63,000. I think we were more like 62.6, 62.7 on the 30th of September. But I can just say this number will be different by Friday. I can tell you we'll keep going up. Which is, I think, a credit to our teachers and our schools that people want to move into Chesterfield County because of the quality of education our children get. So anything you can do to help us make sure that the re-benchmarking is in favor, that we get some more funding that we can. And I can tell you, we have two priorities for our county, and they've known them since last year when when the budget was approved, and that was correcting the salaries of our teachers and correcting the salaries of our staff.
Well, I can tell you as a teacher, that's music to my ears. Now retired teacher.
And if you'd like to come back, we have a place for you. See me right after, and we have a contract for you.
Can you teach math?
Yeah, and I tried math a couple times, and that's not quite the way to go. One other question I have, one of the other localities I represent said that several changes in the teacher evaluation process have really have tied their hands, made it difficult to do that. And they asked consideration to restoring some of the performance evaluation measures that have been deleted in the last couple of years. I'm interested if you are experiencing that. Is that something that you see as well, or has that not been a problem in teacher evaluation?
I think it's been a problem for administrators and teachers. When you think about, we're here to make sure our children get a great education and that they are embraced. And the more we are trying to complete the paperwork, the less we have the opportunity to do our job. And I think as a former building principal, been in this business a long time, we do not need more evaluation. We need effective evaluation. And the more we place on teachers to try to evaluate, you and I, we can walk into a classroom, we can spend 10 to 15 minutes, we can see if that teacher is a strong teacher or not because they have grasped the student's attention. That's a fantastic teacher. And so the opportunity to look at revising this, I think it's going to come in this area from what I'm hearing, and that there's going to be some revisions that will help us streamline this, make it more efficient, make it easier to give feedback, because the evaluation should not be a penalty. It should be a feedback. You're doing a fantastic job. Here's something you may want to work on. And when you can provide immediate feedback to someone instead of trying to write a 5 or 6 page litany of things that are going on, it becomes a much more immediate evaluation and a welcome evaluation by administrators and by teachers. And you see a lot more growth, research showing a lot more growth around the country when you're looking at specific points of growth that you're trying to get out of your teachers and working with them to get to that point. And they're more willing to do that because they understand they're not trying to meet all the metrics. But they're going to come when we allow people to do their job.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I have to chime in here as a retired teacher as well. He's exactly right, and I can tell you that I've heard often, it's because the VDOE requires it. The teacher evaluations, the process in the 34 years that I taught in Chesterfield County changed dramatically, and it became more about a check-a-box evaluation process than it was sitting down and chatting with your administrator and your mentor and just crafting your skill. And instead of crafting my skill in the classroom, it was a complete this task, complete this task, complete. And I can tell you that the evaluation process should be overhauled, but from what I understand, our hands are tied. It's the VDOE's mandate that they have that evaluation process. And you should look at it. It's ridiculous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Senator Hashmi?
If no one else has other questions, I want to commend, first of all, the on-time graduation rate, the figure that was cited in Sean's presentation. It's wonderful to see that rise and that it is now 92.3% of on-time graduation. I was just curious if we're tracking the students as they graduate. Are they heading to college? Are they heading to community college, CTE programs? Are they entering the workforce directly? Do we have a sense of what's happening with our graduates and where they're going to, and then percentages that are heading out?
We do. I just don't, off the top of my head, know all the numbers. I would yell out to my staff, but they may yell back at me, so I don't. One thing that we were very surprised with and pleased, I think it was over 24,000 college credits earned this past year in our dual enrollment program, and we had over 2,300 CTE credits, certificates earned by our students. And during the pandemic, we were very pleased to see the growth of students really going after the rigorous piece, and the opportunity that our students, went after. We spoke a lot with John Tyler, soon to be Brightpoint, and they were very cooperative with us to make sure that, and on our staff, especially Belinda Merriman and her team, did a great job of making sure that our students had access to dual enrollment. And I can be more than happy to send everybody the numbers of where we are with our graduates. We keep a track of, they're going 2-year, 4-year career opportunities, and they're going to service, they're going to work. We are actually going to explore at the end of January, bringing in employers into our schools of students. You have the students that are going to college, students that already have a job, they're going into the CT program. I think every child who walks out of our CT program gets a job before they can graduate. But you have the students in the middle that aren't sure what to do. And, if you had a senior and, someone has a senior and say, oh my, it's March. I wonder what I'm going to do. I'm going to graduate in 2 months. What am I going to do? And so we want to give them opportunities to look at employment as well, or move forward with that and have an experience that they feel comfortable with and get some training as that as well. So we know all of our students where they're going, or they tell us they're going to go, with colleges or career, but we also want to make sure that our students who, not only as we have job signing fairs, but also our students who are at the last second saying, I better do something, And that happens to our students, and it just, something happens at an adolescent. They just don't think sometimes down the road.
You mentioned the graduation coaches.
We also, we're very proud, you mentioned our graduation rate, but we're very proud of our dropout rate. It was, right before I got here, it was 7.9. It's now mid-5, and we hope to be below 5 and keep going down. And for a large district, that's a big task. And we hired graduation coaches with our ESSER funding, and they have contacted all students in the last 2 years who dropped out of school and asked them if they'd like to go get their GED, go back into night school. We've actually had 80 students come back into a night school or a GED program to get their degree, to get their diploma. And we just think it's our responsibility to get you, sometimes when you think about dropping out of school, they say statistics tell you in research that 3 months into when they drop out of school, they go, this was a bad mistake. And they don't know how to get back in. And so we've reached out to them. And so we're just excited that we can bring students back into an educational piece, get their diploma in some manner, and contribute to society. I tell them we want them to pay taxes, so get a job.
Senator Morrissey?
Thanks. I'm glad that you addressed that, Dr. Doherty. I met yesterday for quite some time with the president of Richard Bland Junior College, which is the only JUCO school in the Commonwealth, and we talked about dual enrollment, and I was educated. I did not know there was that large a number of students, many coming from Chesterfield County, that are availing themselves of a dual program. They matriculate high school with an associate's degree. It's amazing, and it also allows them considerable savings to their parents that aren't paying for 4 years at $20,000 to $25,000 a year. But it also does the following. It gives the students that much more available space, time to pursue other endeavors, other majors. So whatever Chesterfield County does to promote and encourage its students to participate in these dual enrollment programs, you'll have my unfettered support.
Thank you for that. Just so you know, as we continue to expand our career and technology programs, all of our CT programs will have at least one dual enrollment course as well, because a lot of our students want to continue to get that certificate from John Tyler as they go through their career programming. And so we're really excited about that opportunity, especially as we expand upstairs with 5 new programs. They will all have at least one dual enrollment course as well. Great opportunity for kids to really expand on their knowledge in the field that they're excited about.
It's required that they all take one. Well, it's required that every high school student attempt one DE. Is that the requirement? DE, AP, or CTE, right? And I have to say that I'm the beneficiary of exactly what you just said. My daughter went to UVA with her entire freshman year complete and graduated in 3 years. Chesterfield County literally saved me $20,000 because of the the DE credits and AP credits that she was able to get at Matoka High School. And so it's a phenomenal opportunity that a lot of our students do avail themselves of. And another aspect too, it prepares them for college level work so that they're successful when they get to college. And many students, they get to a 4-year university and they're not prepared, and the dropout rate, as you know, at the university level is large. But our students who go through our DE and AP courses, they're more prepared, not just financially for their parents' sake too, but they're prepared because they face that rigorous coursework in high school.
Yeah, I could kind of echo that too. My son is a senior right now. He's going through the Cisco engineering program. And this is his second year of it. And those credits are adding up, and as he's applying to universities, and it's expensive. And so that really is a great help. And I'm very thankful when I first got on this board, they asked what committees I wanted to be on. I wanted to be on the CTE committee because I really did see the value of this in the community. And when you're out talking to business leaders in the community, one of the biggest questions they always have is, what can we do to help support these programs? Because we're in need of electricians, plumbers, auto body, auto mechanics, you name it. And even some of our technical programs like our Cisco engineering program. And like Dr. Daugherty alluded to, we're going to be expanding upstairs the space that we currently have right now for a lot of our staff. Once we're able to move them to a different location, we're going to be able to offer more programs upstairs and bring more kids into it. But I don't think that the career technical program is going anywhere.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I have your numbers for, my staff is not going to let me rest on this one. So we had 4,540 students graduate last year, and 2,200 of them went to a 4-year college, almost 1,000 went to a 2-year college, 441 went to training or the military, we had 25 in post-ROTC, and we had 1,400 on early college scholars.
Delegate Robinson.
You guys have all done a great job over the last year in dealing with COVID and all the challenges associated with that. But one of the things, since I was in the General Assembly, that I was really amazed at is the state doesn't look at workforce development and education as things that should really be linked together. It was kind of like two separate silos. And I want to commend Chesterfield because you've put those together so they aren't separate silos by doing all you do with the CTE and that. So I commend you for that. And the other compliment I will make to Chesterfield County is that we still get asked, what does Chesterfield do to handle this or do that, as a member of the legislature, because you do a good job and you set a good example. And it's always going to come down to funding. It always will. And no matter what number will always be the right number or the magic number, that'll take care of everything. And there'll always be more that we have to address. But I think the re-benchmarking will at least take another look at that this coming year. And we can get those other positions filled. But I have a question that goes back to the teachers that you say we're short. We're building new schools, which I think would be attractive to teachers to come and teach in new schools. But when has Chesterfield been fully staffed? How long has it been since we were fully staffed with teachers in all the schools?
As far as I know, looking back, never.
Okay.
When you have a large school district, you are always going to be high. We run job fairs year-round to deal with that, and just the amount of volume that you have dealing with that is pretty an enormous task. We have in our HR department just an area on recruitment of staff that we've gone to the business community and we use Indeed. We use the business community model as well. It's amazing the tactics that we brought in people who really understood recruiting to go after that. And you're right, the building, Mosley's going to open up elementary the next couple of years. We're going to have another high school, another new middle school, elementary schools. We're going to keep growing. And the opportunity to make sure that we get ahead of the game. That's why we've already started recruiting for next year and hiring for next year and giving contracts for next year. But I do think the selling point for us is I've never had someone come and say, I don't want to work in Chesterfield. They said, I can't afford to work in Chesterfield. And I can tell you that we've offered people positions and they've turned us down because of our salary scale. And so we're dead set on keeping our promise of getting these salaries where they need to be for next year.
What are you using, excuse me, can I ask another question? So what are you using to base what is the right salary? I know, at an appropriations meeting a couple years ago, there are like, oh, well, you're not paying to the national average teacher salary. But that's calculated a lot of different ways. Right. And they went through like the 3 or 4 different ways of how that could be calculated out. So I'm wondering what you're using to determine that number.
We looked at school divisions comparable to our size, give or take, some levels. But we didn't go up and say, let's look at all of Northern Virginia. That's Northern Virginia money. Mm-hmm. But we did also comparisons of school districts in similar situations around the country as well. And then a salary study was done by an independent auditor who came out and said, here's what your salaries need to be. We had to deal with compression first. So we tackled compression. So a first-year teacher and a 10th-year teacher weren't making $2,000 difference. But the market value is we have to think about around us and the competition, not only from the central region, but throughout the state, because, we've hired, we're in Pennsylvania at job fairs. We're in Delaware. We're in North Carolina. We're going all over the place. We have a good story to tell, and people like the story we're telling them until it gets to the salary. And so we've got to get competitive with the salary. So we know what other people our size are offering, and we've got to, as I tell people, we got to put our big boy pants on now and act like it.
And I think to kind of get back to that, you were right about how do we really know what that true number is? And there is so much different information out there to try to come up with a definitive figure to say, this is going to be the magic number. And, when we went back and forth with our counterparts on the Board of Supervisors, pretty frequently on this, and they had agreed this would be a perfect opportunity to bring in an outside consulting firm to come in and do a salary study. And so what we did was we kind of handed it off to them. We said, you're right. They were arguing, we're arguing. So we brought in a mediator to take a look and see where we're at. And that salary study came back and said, these are the issues you do need to address. You do need to raise your salary here in these specific areas, and they gave us a roadmap to do it, which we were thankful for, and I think that our teachers and our staff are thankful for. Anyone else with any questions or comments? Before I go on to the board members, Dr. Daugherty did slide this over to me to make sure that I did bring it up for you guys to see. And there is one at your table, and you guys may have been lucky enough to also receive one of these in the mail at your house. And on the back, there's a great picture of us. But what we, one of the questions and comments that we always have was, how can we communicate better? How can we communicate better as a school division? And so we thought about, well, not everyone has social media, not everyone is using email. So we decided that quarterly, we thought that it would maybe be a good idea, and we're going to evaluate it to see if it's an effective use of funds and whatnot. But we decided that CCPS on the go would be something that we'd be able to mail out to everyone, regardless of if you have children in school or not, because we've had a number of constituents that have approached us and talked about, I don't have kids in school anymore, but I'm really curious about what's going on in school, and specifically how's my tax money being spent in schools. And so we thought that this was important to be able to get this out to everyone so they can get their hands on it and they can look what's happening in our schools every quarter. Because if you're not connected in some way and you just hear about something that's happening in the schools every year or every other year, we just thought that this would be an important step to keep everyone informed about what is going on in our schools, because we want to be as transparent as possible and we want our community to be as involved as possible. Board members, does anyone have any closing comments or questions? Ms. Haynes?
It's not really a closing comment, but it just, I was thinking of, again, Delegate Robinson's comment about siloing. And so maybe with teacher salary, affordable housing might be, something to talk about as well. Before COVID, this is probably more prevalent in the Midlothian district because we have the highest income zip codes. But what I heard from principals as a problem with recruiting teachers was they say yes, and then they look up their rental income, and they say, no, thank you. I didn't realize, that it costs so much to live here. And one of the principals said that some localities in different states have looked at this idea of, you get to have a subsidized rent for, a year or two to get your foot on the ground as a teacher in your new locality as a way of attracting, especially math teachers, because that's what I always hear from principals. Like, how do I get math teachers? So might be something to think of. Thank you for all your work.
Doctor, I don't know if you wanted me to say it or if you wanted to talk about it, it's fine. But yeah, just really quick, something else that we did in some of our high-need schools. We have an initiative this year that we're going to be looking at to offer bonuses at some of our hard-to-fill schools to try to incentivize some of our teachers to consider transferring to those schools, because it may be more difficult to go out and advertise to fill a vacancy at a particular school over another one in a particular area. So if we can incentivize some of our teachers who currently are with us to maybe make that move, if there's a financial component with it, we're hoping that that'll help close our gaps at some of our higher need schools that have more gaps and without having teachers there. So, any other comments? All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.